I don't know. I purposely stayed away. One of the things I do is I have great respect for these creatures. They're primates, they're individuals. So I know where their territories are. In this one particular area, I know where their territory is, I should say. And I will not foray into there until I'm ready and at that point, out of respect to them.
So when you found this area that you suspect is their little home, it was empty? Oh, it was. So what do they do? Yeah. Do they have a different area every night, or do they make it, come back for a couple of days, and then leave? I mean, how long do they stay in their little area?
Well, I think these areas are basically animals that get caught out on the home range and really decide to spend the night, or spend the day. And that will happen from time to time. As of all of us, we do stay in hotels ourselves. So when they have traveled out too far, got short, got lost, said, okay, this is where I'm going to flop for the night or the day, because they're mainly nocturnal versus diurnal. So they may flop there for the day, or there may be a group that's in transit from one of their territories to maybe a different seasonal territory that they may flop there for a night or two. Entirely possible. Then again, I could be completely wrong as well. I mean, it could have been an area where they had stayed. Understand that just because they're not as complex as we are, per se. We have a territory, our territory is our home. Well, they don't buy their territory. They don't have to go to the bank and make a mortgage payment. So they have a little bit of leeway where, okay, today we're here, today we may be over by this tree, next week we may be, 100 yards away, or we may be, a half mile away. So generally within a specific area that they consider their territory.
All right, so when you came across this little area, how many do you think were bunking there? Do they all sleep together in one little thing, or do they have like all these little different little areas that they sleep?
I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you. All I know is that it was an area probably about 20 to 30 feet in diameter, that there seemed to be some great disturbance, that, and I look for, any signs of deer, any signs of bear, nothing. I found something very large and kind of, decided to spend the night there. And I found several areas like that over the years, in areas where, very close to where there's been a high density of sightings. That doesn't necessarily mean their territories are, but I have found their territories based upon what their actions are, based upon what kind of behavior they're using. When an animal uses aggressive behavior, you're pretty close, especially a primate, you're pretty close to the territory. So from there, instead of intruding upon that territory, which may force them to move, I respect their line of boundary line, I should say. I respect that, and what I will do in turn is turn around and use that to my advantage.
Now, don't you think it's kind of strange that these sightings of Bigfoot are always of a single Bigfoot? What about the mama and the babies?
Not true.
Oh, it isn't?
Not true. The propensity for the sightings have been, a lot of them have been one single animal. But there have been plenty of reports that I know that there's been one or two or three. There's been reports of an older one with a juvenile. The New York baby video, for example, is your prime example of a larger one with a juvenile.
Oh, did they have that on video?
Yep, you can check it out on my video page. You can also check it on SquatchDetective.com under the archive section, and it's one of the featured stories. I always keep that one on the featured story because it's such a great piece of evidence.
Now, was that shown on television?
It was shown a little bit in the clip you saw, the Bigfoot Chronicles. The news article you showed at the top of the hour. I will say that Finding Bigfoot, the television series on Animal Planet, asked permission to use it via me, because I'm not the copyright owner of that film. I didn't take it. It was submitted to me, and I help the gentleman out that does have the copyright on the film, and after a little bit of negotiating, we did allow them to use the film. So they're gonna do a little piece on that. It definitely will be covered in my documentary. So
nice.
Probably more in depth.
Nice. Okay, so if you see these little areas that they may rest at and whatever, so where do you think they live? Where do they live?
Well, they live in the forest.
I know, but where? I mean, if all these researchers are out there looking for Bigfoot, they've got to be somewhere that you could see them.
Well, if they had an address, or if I had their address, that'd be kind of easy to find them. But what you basically have to do, as I explained in my lecture, is that you have to take a look at 20 to 30 years of sightings and just kind of plot out what kind of behavior has been going on. And after a while, you start to see patterns. And from those patterns, you can hypothesize where their territories are. And then from there, you can set up, basically what I'm doing now, which I didn't speak of at the lecture, is I'm going through what I call phase 2, which is basically testing their abilities to how curious they are. And we're finding out that, hey, this is amazing. We're getting a lot of audio, and actually we move into part 2 of phase 2 next year, where we're trying to collect different type of evidence, and then phase 3, which will be, possibly DNA collection.
Really?
So it's a very, science doesn't take overnight. Science is not overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day, certainly. Being Italian, you know that. But,
well, I'm just bewildered over Bigfoot, because there's so many people out there searching for Bigfoot, and there really is, I haven't seen any evidence of it, and I guess I should search out your website now that I know about you, because I just find it, I just don't understand, there's sightings of them, and people have seen them, and blah, 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 but they can't pinpoint where they are in the forest, and if they, okay, now where do you see the toe that's bigger? Where's the third one? 1, 2, that one right there. Oh, okay, okay.
And it's kind of hard to tell, but if I crook it this way,
I see it.
You can see the, and the funny thing is, and this is all on the website, this is my cast, but not only was that toe the same, but there's a little ridge line right here. It appears to be like a callus that,
probably from an old one.
Right. Now, I'm just going to do a quick example to show you the difference. Now, I wear a size 10 shoe, and there is my...
Oh, that's like a 14, huh?
And there's my shoe.
That's got to be, what, a 14, 15? Look at that.
I would say it's probably a 14, 15 quadruple wide.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that, these prints are they're not altogether flat. But if you look very carefully, you can see some definition to the foot. Obviously, there's this callus that showed up on the other, on the 2009 cast as well. But they're very flat-footed. There's generally a lack of an arch, or this may be a bit of overcast. So there's a little bit of an arch right here.
How many toes do they have?
5.
Oh, really? It looks more.
No. Actually, if you look, it's kind of hard to show you, but let's see. There's 1,
hold it up
2,
a little bit
3.
more.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. There you go.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Now, I've seen other casts that people have put on their video, and I believe on TV as well. They're
3-toed ones?
They're wide. The toes are really wide. So I've seen casts that don't look like yours.
Actually, that foot is one of the wider ones. And Sasquatch prints generally are wide ones. I've seen a lot of people show me these prints, and there's an arch, and I'm going, that's a human print, because Sasquatch don't have a pronounced arch. Mm-hmm. Sasquatch don't have 3 toes unless 1 is amputated, or 2 are amputated. It just defies. Now people say, well, maybe that's inbreeding. Well, that's just conjecture. I know what I can prove, and primates have 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes on each foot. So that being said,
now do you think Bigfoot, once he mates with a female and they have offspring, that they stay together as a family? Or do they go from...
Yes, they do, and they vacation every year. You know, usually they head down to the Jersey Shore, and they. I'm not sure. It's a good question. It all depends. See, my behavior studies are primate behavior studies, and what makes it really important is that on a primate study, it doesn't matter if a Sasquatch is hominid, more related to us, or pongid, more related to apes. Stuff like family unit type of behaviors, they're similar among pongids and hominids, but they're different as well. So to answer a question like that without actually observing a family group, kind of hard to tell. But I will say, one person asked me a real good question that kind of made a lot of sense to me. And I had to think about it, but it just goes to show you, using the primate habitation study, how this works. He asked the question he asked me, and it goes back to our question we covered earlier about bodies and being dead. Well, you got to kind of understand this. They're smart. They live in really remote areas where their territories are, that man doesn't really go to very often, and they know this and if they do, they move on. But when somebody gets older, he asked me, do you think as they get older, do you think they travel as much? Now let's think about that. As we get older, in our older age, we tend not to travel and go out of our territory much.
Exactly.
We tend to stay at home. So if they're dying, they are dying in the most remote places we can think of. Ergo, that's perhaps why we haven't found bones or bodies. When we get sick, do we not stay home?
Exactly. Never. So, now that one, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so that's what I love about this primate behavior and habitation study.
Okay, but wait a minute. Now you were just talking and saying how they're always on the move. They really don't stay in one place. So if that old...
No, they range every day. That's a primate nature. We go out every day, but our homes generally stay in the same spot.
So they go back...
I said, yeah.
Well, But, okay, so if they keep their same location, but they range every day, somebody must be able to find where their home is, if they're staying in one location.
Well, let's think about it. When something has a 4-foot stride, it can range quite a large distance in a very short period of time. I mean, if I tried to walk after that, remember, it's taking about 3 steps for every one of us. We have to take 3 steps for every one of its.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, so then they have these sick and elderly. They can't travel. Okay, so they must be hiding somewhere. They must either have a cave or maybe they do have a nest that they put all these branches on top of them and they're going down underneath the ground. Maybe that's it.
Well, I know about underground, but I think, because the one thing I've learned is I don't think a Sasquatch would be smart enough to put itself in a corner like a cave.
That's true.
I think they always have, the one thing I've learned is they always have a game plan. They always have an out. They always leave themselves a back door. So for them to live in caves, and I know it's been, a lot of people suggest, they live in caves. No, not really. Unless the cave has an alternate entrance. And the funny thing is the only place I've ever seen evidence or potential evidence of a Sasquatch in a cave was down in New Mexico, and that cave had an alternate entrance and exit. So what do you think? How do you think they're hiding? I don't think they hide they're not too hard to hide. Think about it. Their fur is covered like the forest, and They lay on the ground in grassy, perhaps, areas or wooded areas. They can hear you coming for a ways, because as humans, we're not quiet, and we're not supposed to be. But they have an incredible sense of hearing and senses. So obviously, when you start coming plopping down that road, that trailway, or cutting brush, snapping twigs, they're going to be alert way ahead. You're not just going to go, oh, there's one sound asleep. It's just not going to happen that way.
God. So you've done expeditions by yourself. You said you've gone out hunting for Bigfoot by yourself?
Well, I do what I call scout missions.
Scouting missions.
I don't necessarily always stay out, by my lonesome all the time. I wouldn't recommend it to the novice, that's for sure, because there's other critters in the forest that are not so friendly.
Yeah.
The one thing I've learned is I'm not trying to find their territories. I just need to know where their territories are. Because of their curiosity, I cannot bother them. I have the ability not to bother them in their territories. Let them come out and say hello to us.
God. Well, I hope you can find one, because I would love to know more about them. And I'm going to check out your website some more and look at your videos, because you're the best guest I've had, and the best person I've ever talked to about Bigfoot. I've always wanted to do a show, and you are fabulous. You're full of knowledge, and you're so lucky. I wish I could do what you do. I'd be scared shitless. I couldn't do it. But I give you a lot of credit, honey.
I've been there too. Remember, if you do that stuff in your house, make sure you bring a change of underwear.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve? Chat room, hello, wake up. Does anybody have any questions?
I put them to sleep. You see that?
Would anybody like to call me on the phone, or I can call you? I can call with no long distance charges.
Well, I think there was a... Let me just back up. I think there was there was a question earlier, and it had to do with, I'm trying to find it, I'm trying to scroll back. It was something about, the TRBC and the Ranger Charles Branson I had on my show, and all I'll say is, I will say this. I know that stirred a little bit of controversy, and I was unaware that it was Charles Branson, the guest I had on, who was a retired Oklahoma State Forestry Ranger, who said, oh yeah, these things exist, we've known about them, we know about them, we just, we kind of blow people off on them, we don't investigate them. But,
really? He was the one that was showing a video, right?
No.
Okay.
He was on the news, and but anyway, there was a little controversy stirred up about a group that stayed on his property that apparently took some shots at one of these creatures, and he said, no, I don't want you guys back, blah blah blah, and there was a little bit of controversy started about that, and people. So I think the question was something about asking my opinion of it. I have no opinion on what other groups do. I don't judge other groups. If a group wants to be a kill group, although I don't stand philosophically against, I stand philosophically against that. I'm a no-kill proponent. I don't want to see any harm come to these creatures. Obviously, they're entitled to do whatever they want to do. That's America. But
okay. Cheyenne wants to know, what do you know of the Honey Island swamp monster?
Well, that's a good question. I've been actually out there. I spent about a total of, on and off, about a month out in Honey Island.
Where's Honey Island?
Honey Island is in an area in Louisiana. It's about, I would say, 30 to 45 miles northeast of New Orleans. Trying to think of the name of the town off the top of my head, and Slidell. It's around the town of Slidell, Louisiana, and I've met, I met Dana Holyfield, and I met her husband, and they're very fine people, fine folks. Did a lot of research out there, a lot of snooping around. Did not hear a thing, did not see a thing. The tracks, I believe, are a lot of times either basically blue heron imprints or the dew claw of a gator, an alligator, is what they're getting. I know M.K. Davis and a filmmaker by the name of Jay Michaels, who I actually just got to meet a couple of weeks ago, did a special or documentary on the Honey Island swamp monster, and they visited one of the men who brought the Honey Island swamp monster to the forefront. Well, they had met somebody that had rented his old house. In turn, they ended up tracking down the people that lived there immediately after them because they had an interesting artifact. And what that artifact was a shoe with what appeared to be a dew claw or the print on the tacked to the bottom of a shoe. So you can make these prints by just walking in the shoes. Now that looks like it pointed to a hoax. And that's how kind of the documentary left off. Now, what I had discovered is that in talking with the locals down there, that they kind of chuckled about Harlan Ford. They're like, oh, no, he saw what he saw. But, see, old Harlan, he put those tracks out there on the south end of the island because all the sightings were really happening in the north end of the island. And there was a lot of folks then and even now that don't want people snooping around the forest at the north ends of the forest, if you know what we mean.
Okay, go ahead. You finished?
So that's basically my summation, that there's something going on. It's not going on in the south end of the island at all, where the focus and all the attention has been to. It's actually going on another. It was kind of drawn off. But, of course, you don't want to run into stills out there because that's not necessarily the safest place to be.
Now, somebody wanted to know about the low frequency. What is known about the low frequency sounds they emit?
Not much, and that's what I'm trying to figure out now. I'm trying to find a university or a bioacoustics lab that will take a look and listen to the audio to see if it's in the infrasonic range. It's believed that they may use infrasound, and there's been a lot of, I can tell you, what our expedition team has felt, that we do believe that they do use infrasound, because there's certain biological things. And what infrasound is a very low frequency type of tone, rather. Yeah, let me get this right. It's a low frequency tone that generally is inaudible to the human ear, which is why we never heard anything like that, and why the recorder may have picked it up, because it's within the recorder's range. But what this does, and studies in the UK have shown, is that this low pitch basically will vibrate the eardrums, will vibrate the eyeballs, can cause people to hallucinate, cause people to hear things, cause people to think something's talking to them, giving them feelings of paranoia, give them fear feelings. In fact, the U.S. military has been experimenting with infrasonic bursts to disperse crowds of protesters and stuff like that.
Really? And this is what Bigfoot emits, these low frequencies?
Well, I may have very well caught one, and we're in the process of trying to find a lab that will take this on and say, hey, can you tell me what range is this in? Is this infrasonic? I'm not asking you to say whether or not this is Bigfoot, but I'm in an area of woods where there is no animal known to man,
really, yes,
at least in science, that does this in this particular area. Now, large mammals do use infrasound.
Oh, they do?
Lions, elephants have been known to use infrasonic bursts.
Okay.
And what it does is that's how they kind of paralyze their prey, because it disrupts them. And as being a victim of infrasound, I know what it feels like. I've actually felt my ear twitch and vibrate, and that was something I kind of went, I never heard that in my life before. Somebody had told me about that. I'm like, no, I've never heard of that before. And then, ergo a year later, I'm out in the field and I'm getting like, wow, it's really creepy in here. I don't understand. And also my inner ear starts twitching. So I'm going, what is this? Is this so?
Oh, wow.
So, hence, when people see Bigfoot disappear, or they hear people say, well, the Bigfoot told me to get out of there.
Yeah.
Or they heard Bigfoot talking like a human language. These could all very well be side effects of an infrasonic burst, and just the side effects. Nothing paranormal at all, but very explainable in science.
Now, I know you don't go into the paranormal with Bigfoot. We do have somebody in chat. Oh, gosh, I can't find him. He's an American Indian, and he also investigates, I guess, Bigfoot. Oh, I wish I could find... anyway, they're saying that Bigfoot is a tree spirit. Bigfoot is a great tree spirit.
Well,
but that's the American Indian. That's
just that's all legend, and that everything is especially. I respect their beliefs. Don't get me wrong, but there was a time when gorillas were thought to be monsters and the boogeyman, and that they kidnap women. And they really didn't. There's been a lot of animals that have been discovered that were supposed to have supernatural abilities that really didn't. But they're steeped in legend. And the Native Americans, and I respect that, they're just passing down these legends. Now, some of them may truly believe that's what they are. And for all intents and purposes, they could be that. I'm not saying necessarily in a scientific way, but in a spiritual way.
Now, Cheyenne is also saying about a video that was taken in the 70s. Now, wasn't that video from that guy that admitted they had put on a suit? I know it was...
No. That is the biggest piece of misinformation. And ABC News kind of started that. They had mixed up two separate stories into one.
Okay.
And if you're talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film of '67, nobody ever admitted it was a hoax. Roger Patterson died in 1971, 72, going to his deathbed that this was the real thing. Bob Gimlin, the only other person there, has been on the lecture circuit as recently as just a couple of months ago, telling the story of the film. No, there's been no admission. There's been some clown out there by the name of Bob Hieronymus that says, well, I was the guy in the suit, yet he can't come up with the suit, and his story has changed in two different ways. As a forensic interviewer, I can tell right up and down he's lying, because at first he comes out with a story that says, well, he didn't show the suit to anybody but his mother, and that was that, and then they took the suit, and that was that. 3 months later, he tells another story how he went to the bar and showed everybody in the bar the suit. Well, just a few months earlier, he said the only person that had seen it was his mother. Okay. When you look at a story that is fractured as that, times can always fluctuate, distances, things that are part of the senses, but the storyline shouldn't change, and it changed there. The guy was down on his luck. He was looking for a little fame and notoriety. He lived in the area. He capitalized on it. That's that.
Now, there is a video on YouTube, and it was, I don't know if it was Monster Quest or History Channel that did it. Was it Monster Quest? And they were talking about that video, and the scientists were agreeing that they didn't think it was a hoax, that it was the real thing.
It was probably one of the History Channel specials. There's been several of them. The last being was Bigfoot, the definitive guy, which wasn't very definitive at all. they had this one scientist trying to say, well, who basically slandered a dead man to say that the film was not real. But they couldn't scientifically prove that the film was a hoax. And then they had the Legend Meets Science, Sasquatch Legend Meets Science, which was actually the precursor to Monster Quest, done by the same production company, where they had the graphic, basically the computer generation of the biological movement of it, and they said, well, it'd be very unlikely for a human to be walking like this, let alone in the costume as fluidly as it would have. So there's been several different ways and several different arguments, and frankly, it is what it is. And again, you asked me earlier, do I carry a camera with me? It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter what picture I come up with, video I come up with, unless there's other supporting evidence to back that up.
They're going to call it a fake.
They're going to call it a fake. They're going to say, oh, it's not real. They're going to say it's a misidentification. I've had people tell me, oh, well, that picture in the trail cam photo, that's an owl. Well, I have a scientist a physicist, showing you and showing everybody and explaining it, how it's not. This is on the ground. Well, he believes in this, and that's, so I'm not believing him. Well, just because what he believes in it doesn't defy the law of physics. So you have your ardent people who will not believe anything at all, even certain Bigfoot researchers, just because it's not their evidence, it's not real.
Now, Steve, how did you get on Monster Quest?
I was sitting around one day and I got a phone call.
Really?
That's it. Basically, it's not like I put myself out there. A lot of times people come to me. I just do my thing, and I do my thing very well. I try to do it very well, and as you can tell, I'm a no BS kind of guy.
Yeah.
That's why I'm reluctant to say exactly what this is or that is, because I have no scientific data or even investigative data to substantiate that. But I do have certain beliefs, which I at least have some corroborative evidence. And as an investigator, I'm not a scientist. I'm not looking for definitive proof. I'm an investigator. I'm looking for corroborative evidence, testimony, and physical evidence.
Now, you did talk about you're going after DNA. You're going to be doing that?
Eventually. We may be a couple of years off to that. I'm still developing a non-invasive DNA type of grab.
Now, when you got that footprint, was there anything that you could have gotten from the footprint in the dirt, like any hair or anything that you could have used for DNA testing?
Well, you see, that's the chances are no. What you have to understand is that New York State, especially that cast was cast in November, there's a lot of substrate that wasn't in the dirt, that was actually on the hard ground, and the weight of it had pushed it down. And in actuality, it was a bed of leaves that actually got pushed down. So that was cast over a bed of leaves, twigs, broken branches. So, and considering it was night, it was starting to rain, the opportunity to grab a hair, I would have literally had to have gone over the whole area with a microscope. So finding a strand of hair in the middle of the woods is a very, very difficult venture.
Now, has anybody ever gotten any hair or anything? Oh, they have. Well, how come they didn't do DNA on it then?
Well, the one thing we're noticing that in the Sasquatch hairs, at least this is what I've been told from what I've seen or read, is that the Sasquatch hairs have either, one, the absence of a medulla, which is the center line in the hair follicle that contains the DNA. The other thing is, unless you're getting a root, an actual root where it comes out at the follicle level, you're not going to get DNA.
Okay, so if the hair just falls off of the body, they can't get DNA off of that.
Right. And if you think about it, if a hair's been sitting around for a while, it's going to get degraded pretty quick as well.
Yeah.
But what they can do is they can say, let's look at this hair and let's compare it to known animals. And what happens, in probably about 8 or 9 different occasions, so it's been reported that some of these, like they found a hair that came back as primate, but unknown primate in Oregon. It's nothing concrete. But what people have to understand as well is that in a court of law, even DNA is circumstantial evidence. You know, it's there by circumstance. You know, it'd be nice to have it, but finding a DNA sample without any supportive documentation, like, oh, here's this blood, scoop up the blood, well, it comes back to an unknown primate, and this is what, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a Sasquatch either. The science could turn around and say, well, you know, it could have been something else.
Well, how are you going to go back getting DNA then from a Sasquatch, from a Bigfoot?
Well, you really want me to give all my secrets?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I want to go with you.
Believe it or not, the simplicity of this method is maddening. It's maddening. I sat there and I thought about, you know, I don't, number one, dart guns, and somebody say, oh, well, dart one, you know, with a DNA dart. Ain't gonna work. Come on, you're going to shoot through woods at something with a dart gun, no less. You know, it's going to hit a leaf, and that's it. You're not going to get another shot at it.
Well, if you shot a dart at the Bigfoot, how are you going to get the dart out of them?
Well, they fall out.
Oh, they do? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they auto-eject after a few seconds. So that won't work. Sorry, oh, why don't we trank one? Well, again, you're going back to the dart gun, and you don't know how much to trank him with anyway. So you may end up killing him, and we don't want that to happen. So the propensity for that is, I was sitting there for many, many months thinking about how to go about and do it. And then one day I just went, boink. And you know what? It was so simplistic, I'm mad at myself. I didn't see it years earlier. But I will say this, that it comes back to the old adage that you know, keep it simple, stupid. And and the basis of primate behavior is that primates have two sensory ecstasy taste centers, and that's very simply sweet and salty. That's why, as even us wonderful Homo sapiens, we love our candy bars, we love our chocolate, and we love, you know, potato chips and salty snacks, because that's where our taste ecstasy centers are. So knowing that, it makes it kind of easy now.
So when you go out on the field, do you think you'll put out sugary things for them, candy bars and stuff?
Well, I don't want to put too many. Last thing I want is a Squatch on the scene with a sugar high. But
they eat berries.
I'm ripping stuff up now. I don't. Well, those. In reality, yeah, I may bait with some very stuff, but there has to be really. When I do this, it's going to have to be what I call also a technology trap involved with it as well. So I'm working very arduously on developing a technology trap that's kind of foolproof, and that's why it's. I'm not going to be doing it this year. I'm not going to be doing it next year. Perhaps the year after that. And what I mean by technology trap, we're not actually going to trap the Bigfoot, but we actually want to record with audio and video this capture of the DNA.
And are you going to go back to your familiar places?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As long as it keeps producing what it's been producing. And history will show that this place has been active for the last 30 years. So I don't see them leaving anytime soon. You know, and any of the human incursion on the area has not been nearby to where they're at. So they've been left pretty much unmolested for many years, and that's why they feel so comfortable with coming in and annoying. Well, and I say annoying us. We're probably annoying them, but they come in and they walk around, and we can hear them. And it's amazing that on several occasions, it always seems to be three of them. And as we hear distinctively, three different walking noises coming from three different areas of the camp. Now people may say, well, why don't you spotlight it up? Why don't you do all this stuff? Easier said than done. And number two, if you spotlight them up, that's pretty much going to end your night.
So do you hear this while you're sleeping then?
Oh, Sleeping is even more amazing because you'll hear stuff walking around, and every once in a while you will hear. And again, I do a lot of stuff where I'm not out to collect evidence. I'm out to gain intelligence. And every once in a while you hear something scream out there. Literally, one morning I heard this huge scream.
Oh my God.
There's been times I've had rocks thrown at my tent.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and on my last expedition, in fact, it'll be part of the documentary, I get hit with a rock. It was pretty interesting stuff. But as far as rock throwing, I'll give you another very anecdotal story that dates back to the 1750s with Major Roger Roberts, the man who created Roberts Rangers and eventually led to the creation of our own Rangers, the Army Rangers. Colonel Major Roberts was a Ranger in the British Army. He commanded a bunch of commando-like soldiers who fought in the French and Indian War. And one of his log entries was very simple, that they had to repel with a volley of shot a group of bears throwing rocks at them.
Bears throwing rocks? I've never heard of that before.
Well, exactly. Bears do not throw rocks.
Oh, they were saying that. Oh my God.
Because at that time, that was the only thing. Remember, at that point in time, there was no such thing as apes. They hadn't been discovered yet. So what ends up happening is that, well, it must have, these big hairy things were throwing rocks at us, must have been bears.
Oh God. Well, Steve, so when you're sleeping, when you're camped, do you have a big campfire going at night? Do you keep that campfire going?
Sometimes.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So while you guys are sleeping, you have your recorders on and you have video cameras on as well?
No, it all depends. The last couple of expeditions, usually what I do is I collect the evidence. I may leave a recorder or two out there recording. And then that's what you do. I know the last couple of times the night's been quiet, but then again, that's because we've spotlighted them. And once you spotlight them, that pretty much ends the night.
Well, why don't you have those, they have those hunting, those, they're camouflage cameras where they'll click on when there's movement. How come you don't use those? And while you guys are sleeping? Well,
I do use one, because right now that's what the budget can afford. But any of those cameras are like needles in haystacks. What you have to do is I've had that camera out in the Adirondacks for many, many months and years, either one trail camera or another, and I've deployed it probably for 3 or 4 months if you combine all the times they've been out there, 3 or 4 months, I haven't got a single picture of anything.
Really? Now, did you put this...
Not even a deer.
Okay, so is this the area that you kind of think is their area that you put the camera out and you don't get anything?
Not a thing. Not a
okay, wait a minute then. Okay. So, so if you think this is their area, that their home base or whatever, and you've got that camera out there for months and months, why aren't you capturing them? Why are you not getting them on video?
Needle in a haystack.
But this is their area that they go in all the time.
Well, it's outside their territory. It's a needle in a haystack. Like I said, there's tons of deer in the Adirondack forest. I see them when I drive in, see them when I drive out.
Steve, I'm telling you, there is something more to a Bigfoot. I'm telling you, there's got to be something else. Either they become invisible, or I'm still believing that they have another plateau that they go into. They hide.
Well, let me explain this to you. All right, they can make infrasonic noises, I'm fairly certain. We know they have an incredible vocal range, both high and low. I know that in all our sighting reports, they're missing. A lot of times people do not see earlobes. Now, I'll give you a little example. What is the function of an earlobe?
Probably to protect your inner ear. What is it? Flapping? What is it?
But when you talk to somebody, and I'm going to just take my cans off for a second. When you talk to somebody, you tend to look at them because their ears,
to the direction,
are made to basically focus in on what we're looking at.
Okay.
Now, if you take those earlobes away, all of a sudden your hearing is now omnidirectional. Now, given the fact that they can use infrasonic bursts, which they may be able to hear, they may be able to hear in spectrums that we cannot hear in, there may be a little electronic whistle or whine, much like a VCR does when you start it. You hear this little high-pitched whine, this ultrasonic frequency, not infrasonic, but an ultrasonic frequency, almost like a dog whistle.
Okay, so,
They make it to hear the actual unit being powered.
See,
that's not my theory. That's actually a theory of Bill Dranginis down in Virginia, who's done a lot of high-tech stuff. Notwithstanding, if they can disappear, why did I get a picture of one picking up an apple?
Because you were lucky. Okay, fine, but how many pictures do people have of those? How many times are you actually able to see one? I still think that they have the capability of disappearing, going into another dimension. Because nobody of all these years of investigating and all these people that go out looking for Bigfoot, you have never really found where they home. You haven't found any other evidence of them. Their feet. They wait a minute. They kill a deer or they kill a pig or whatever. There's nothing left over. They eat it all the bones and everything.
That's simply not true. There's been lots of pictures of deer kill. There's been
from Bigfoot. From Bigfoot.
Absolutely. There's been pictures of. I had one recently, as long ago as last year, of a fowl that had been ripped apart. There was nothing left but feathers. I have had researchers go into Bigfoot areas that have found patches of deer fur and bones. So there is evidence, but the thing is, it's evidence that's not necessarily readily accepted by everybody. And the biggest thing I can tell you is why they're not interdimensional or anything like that. They leave footprints behind. They've left indelibly. There's been more reports of them walking away instead of just disappearing. Why do we see them at all if they're invisible?
You don't see them all the time. See, that they're not always. Go ahead.
But my big thing is we cannot predicate. We are not the ultimate beings in the woods. Put yourself in the woods, and I will ask anybody, go out and get yourself a picture of a wolf or a coyote while it is in the woods, or a bear, without putting yourself in danger, or without putting yourself, or just trying to do it, because you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
You see what I mean?
That, yeah.
So what it is that we have a lot of folks that get frustrated out of there, and they're looking for any way to explain this. And the very simple thing is that science is arrogant, and we as Homo sapiens and humans are arrogant. We think we have the do-all, end-all with technology, and that is simply not so. You got to understand, Eric Robert Rudolph, the abortion clinic bomber and the Atlanta Olympics bomber, ran for several months after being hunted by National Guard, FBI, and the full forces of local law enforcement, county law enforcement, state law enforcement, and he was able to hide in the woods for several months before he was actually captured. Yeah. And that's a human. So the forests are not the easiest place to collect evidence, nor are they the easiest person to find, something very rare or a needle in a haystack. And you would think that, can't we just put a helicopter up there and do thermal sweeps? Well, they were doing that with Eric Robert Rudolph, and he had campfires and they couldn't find him.
Wow.
So you got to understand, it's very vast, and I can't see trying to solve this mystery by entering another mystery in when there's a very logical explanation.
God, I hope you can really produce more evidence on him and get some pictures and I really would like to have proof of Bigfoot. I really would. I'm still not convinced that he is not superhuman and that he might hide in trees or whatever. It's just mind-boggling because I just don't understand it. You know, I just don't understand it. I mean,
there's probably a lot of evidence that hasn't come forward as well. I mean, you think about it, the New York baby video, which is on the website, that was shot accidentally, and it took them 5 years to go, hey, what the hell is this? So it takes them a while. You know, sometimes they catch these things they don't even know. You know, and it happens. So how much time? You know, how many people? I've known hunters in woods that have said, you know, that have had encounters with these, and they're like, my God, now I understand why this is occurring and why that's occurring, because really, you're hunting, you're looking for specific signs. I can go in the forest and look at certain areas and go, hey, look at that, look at that. Something, one of our guys has been there. But as a hunter, if you're looking for a deer or a moose or anything, you're looking at a certain level. You know, you got to look a little higher sometimes, and you got to look for different types of evidence. So you're tracking something completely different.
Yeah.
So that's why. But there is a lot of evidence out there. I mean, dermal ridge evidence that, you know, Jimmy Chilcutt down in, he's a retired fingerprint expert. And in actuality, he had a side job, which he used to go to zoos and fingerprint their primates so they could identify them. So here's this guy that knows all about dermal ridge patterns of different primates. And he took one cast that was cast in X year, took another cast that was cast 1,000 miles away many years later, and their dermal ridge patterns were similar. Not identical, but they're similar. Like all our dermal ridge patterns as humans are similar, but they're not identical because they have different little features and loops and stuff like that. But our patterns are the same. Well, he found the same thing with this. They were different dermal ridges, but they had the same flow pattern. So.
Wow. God, you were so interesting. I can be annoying. I'm sorry, but I'm just fascinated with Bigfoot. Absolutely fascinated with them.
Yeah. You know, I tell a lot of people is that sometimes, you know, people accuse me of not being open-minded, trying to believe into that. But I accuse the same folks saying, listen, you're not being open-minded too, that there's a logical explanation for all of this. And here it is, 1, 2, and 3, and it makes all the sense in the world. I'm just glad I got that recording done, and I hope I can get that thing to a lab that can say, wow, that was a really low pitch. We really can't tell you what that was, other than the fact that it was in the infrasonic range, or very close to the infrasonic range.
Now, when is your... Go ahead, honey. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because obviously that would be a real breakthrough as to why all these paranormal things, you know, the people talking to Bigfoot, the people say are not talking to Bigfoot, but Bigfoot talking to them, saying, well, it sent me a message telepathically to get out of there. No, that was just the side effect of infrasound, which science has proven can happen.
Damn. So. Oh my God. When is your documentary going to be out? Or
well, we're still wrapping up video. I hope to have it out by spring of next year, possibly even sooner. So it'll be sometime early next year.
Wow. Oh my God. So I they don't talk much on the news about Bigfoot, and when anybody has any sightings or anything, I guess they just don't report it, and so it doesn't make news because I don't see anything.
Well, you believe it or not, Bigfoot is mentioned a lot in the news, a lot more than people think. I put out Google alerts for the keyword Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and I get reports on it. I get these little news articles every day. Now, some may be editorials, some may be just incidental references, but every once in a while I'll get a gem in there. And there's probably about a dozen, maybe 2 dozen a year that come out in various news places. And maybe a sighting, of course, depending. It seemed to be this way. 20 to 30 years ago, it was science who was the ones that, the scientists that were really the ones scoffing at it, and the media was sucking it up. Now science seems to be more interested in it, especially listening to Jane Goodall, who says that she believes it's very well possible that they could exist. That coming from Jane Goodall, that was a huge win for the Bigfoot community. But it seems like media, at least some of the outlets, have taken it on as like a joke. Let's make fun of it.
Well, they think paranormal is funny too. You know, they make fun of paranormal.
Right, but with the if you look at your three different phenomenons that have been the major mainstays of this whole paranormal realm, which is ghosts and spirits and stuff like that, UFOs and ufology and Sasquatch, the least believed amongst the people is the Bigfoot Sasquatch thing. So they're less likely to make fun of the ghost stuff, especially when you have the advent of programs like Ghost Hunters and which Paranormal State, but Ghost Adventures I love. Then you have the UFO phenomenon, which there's a lot more truth to it than strangeness, but there's also room for error in there as well. But people have seen a lot of strange things, and they believe them. It's the same thing with ghosts. Not everybody sees a Bigfoot. It's probably the smallest percentage out of those three things that people see. Mm-hmm. So what happens is the media has found, well, this is our target because we're less likely to offend people attacking that and making a joke of that than they are if they say they attack the ghost community, because these shows have millions of followers. Same thing with UFOs, because you look at the latest thing on UFOs. I just kind of posted on Facebook because I saw it and I was like, wow, was the Eagles versus the New Orleans Saints game where they had Monday night, I don't know which it was, Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, I don't know what it was, but here's this football telecast and they're showing scenes in New Orleans at night and something flashes by the camera and they slow it down and it's something very interesting there. So people buy into that and they put it out there and they do a very neutral article. But Bigfoot, once in a while, and it all comes down to how you deal with the media. I'm point blank when somebody comes to me and says, well, we'd like to do an article on Bigfoot, or we'd like to do a TV show on Bigfoot. I say, well, let's set the bar straight. If this is going to be a joke, you're not going to be very happy because I'll make you all look bad too. Simple as that. But if you're going to do a serious article, I'm on board. If not, if it's going to be lighthearted and humorous, thank you, but I'm not interested. So, and I've been fortunate that like the Bigfoot Chronicles they did had a little humor in it, but it wasn't insultive type of humor. Many years ago in 2003, I was on a show with an author by the name of Paul Bartholomew. It was a morning show, and they did a few segments with me and Paul talking about it. And the correspondent was really into it, very serious about it. He was the one who called us, and he came out of the production booth. And he basically called the anchors their asses. He goes, because as we're doing the segment, they're rolling their eyes on camera.
Oh my God.
And to me, that's very typical. But where's the anchorman now? The morning anchor has been fired since, and I see people understand why I didn't like the guy, and I told them why, because the guy, hey, we've taken our time to come on your show and work, do free stuff for your network so you get advertising. You turn around by insulting me by going and making faces. You know what? It's a good thing you weren't sitting near me, because I'd slap you right in front of your audience. And I would. And that's what I tell them. If we're doing a live feed and you make fun of me, I'm going to smack you.
Good for you.
I may get arrested, but you know what? I'm going to smack you and make you look like an ass. Simple as that. So they tend not to do that. I do have a university site. You won't find that little nugget of wisdom anywhere, but I will, or I could, I could self-induce some vomiting and throw up on them while I'm on TV.
Hey, Steve, would you tell everybody where they can find you? You do radio. You have a radio show still?
No, well, we moved completely over to PTN.
Good for you.
So you can find us on PTN Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can visit me on SquatchDetective.com, and there's links there to my Facebook page, my Twitter page, my LinkedIn page, and yes, I'm even on Foursquare, although I don't check in as much as I should.
Oh, that one I never heard of. I haven't heard of that one yet. It has been a real pleasure, and I'm just thrilled to have you as a guest tonight. And I wish you a lot of luck. Good luck on your documentary. I'm hoping to catch your show. I'm sorry I missed it last Sunday. You're only an hour, so I caught the end. Actually, I missed it, so I hope to check in this Sunday because you are just a delight, and it's just been a real pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a guest, and everybody, we're going to say goodnight to Steve, and thank you so much, Steve. Good night.
Good night, folks.
Thank you.